we see solar panels and we think about, as architects, we think about materiality of things. What are solar panels essentially? They are typically large planar surfaces that are made of a impervious material, and it's glass, typically with maybe some aluminum. Glass doesn't rust, which is important in a maritime climate where we are, so there's no corrosion. It's waterproof. Glass lasts for a long time. Everybody has seen really old buildings with original glass work. So if we start to use this material for its materiality, then we stop thinking about it as a pasted on application. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to increase the sort of renewable production and the aesthetics. At the same time, we're trying to tell a story about the place that we're in culturally, technologically, climate, politically, and that should be evident. When you look at one of our buildings, we want it to tell a story to the observer. So what we've been able to do is we've been able to use solar panels and renewable energy in a more aesthetic way. If you see one of our energy systems, they are beautiful. We've packaged them in these really sleek boxes, and they look like an appliance, a high-end appliance. And if you look at, say, there are several of our houses, when you look at them, you can tell, like, oh, wait a minute, this whole lanai, this covered, porch area where there's outdoor eating and seating, that's all solar panels. But they're beautiful. They're glass. They're sleek. They're kind of elegant. They're bifacial. So any of the light that's reflected from the surfaces underneath make the solar panel more efficient and productive. So instead of pasting those on top of an existing roof, which is the roof is a multi-layer system of structural components and impervious surfaces. So it doesn't make any sense if someone in our office, one of our architects came and said, I've got this impervious surface that I've designed, and I'm going to put this other impervious surface on top of it. Everybody, what are you talking about? Why would you do that? So we want to think about, and this is, again, it's a luxury that we've been doing this long enough to where, about 5 years ago, we were able to say, let's treat this as an element, as a materiality, and integrate them into the building. And by doing that, we can get rid of the impervious surface for, say, a lanai or a big overhang on your roof structure. We can lower the cost. And then instead of having, wood framing, plywood, TNG decking, a moisture membrane, standing seam, metal roofing, and then solar panels, we can just get rid of all that. And we can just put the solar panels. So now we've cut the cost of the solar panels, and you have no cost. And now it's not only producing energy for you, which is saving you money, but now it's become a beautiful aesthetic element that's unique to that exact place, because the solar is responding to the natural forces of the environment, the sun, the trees that may be around it. So it starts to, again, tell that story about that place and time and the people that are there inhabiting and using that structure.
It's brilliant. I mean, it makes it so much more functional at the end of the day. It's not just a nice to have, it's actually the core of what you're offering there. Where you've really taken, I think, both a local aspect with the material of what you're converting over to this new building material. It's just incredibly innovative. So if you could share a little bit more about that would be wonderful.
Our office is located in the historical Powella Cannery. It's an old pineapple cannery that was built 99 years ago. We're about to have our 100th anniversary for when the building was built. And the pineapple operation stopped in the late 60s, and it was vacant for a bit. And then it's become a makerspace. So it's this huge industrial building. And now we have 4 or 5 surfboard manufacturers, one pretty large one. And then we have a cabinet shop, a millwork shop, and a few other sort of created spaces, plus our office. So I would go out to the dumpsters to take out the trash. And I remember the first time I opened the dumpster, and it was just full of styrofoam. Like 6-yard dumpster, a big full-size dumpster. It's full of styrofoam. I'm like, wow, it's a lot of styrofoam. Close it, go to the next one, open it up. It's full of styrofoam. My gosh, that's a lot of styrofoam. And it's all going to the landfill. Maui, and this is what I found is indicative of Hawaii. We are sort of at the tip of the spear for all of the issues that the world is sort of facing, because we're an island, right? So we have all of the circumstances and factors that everyone is dealing with, we just have them condensed in a very small space. Landfills are controversial. Nobody wants a landfill in their backyard. And the things, this culture of just throwing things away, it has to, at one point, we have to like, okay, how are we going to change the way that we do this? We have like William McDonough and sort of the cradle to cradle aspect, but when are we really going to implement that, and what are we going to do as individuals? It's interesting to have this sort of strategic thought and theory, but how are we going to start to implement that? So when I look at that dumpster full of styrofoam, I'm like, we've got to be able to do something with this. And I had learned years ago, I had helped a really good friend of mine build a house in southern Washington state where it's very cold and it's very kind of a remote place, and common for the power to go out there. So heating the house is often, by sort of a fireplace. So we need it to be real efficient. And he said, hey, I found these, he called them big gray blocks, and they're insulated composite concrete forms. And I looked at them, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so we built his house out of these forms, and I got to help him stack the blocks, and that was a lot of fun. And so when I'm looking at this dumpster, I'm like, I could make those blocks out of this styrofoam. So there started this sort of, hey, I grabbed a couple pieces, I chopped it up, and I got a weed whacker, and I chopped it up with the weed whacker, and I mixed it. And in the end, it took us about 5 or so years, and we kind of figured out how we could do it. And about 2.5 years ago, the county offered us a grant. They said, hey, we have an issue with our landfill. We're running out of space, and we don't want to, have to buy, or worst cases, use eminent domain to take over more land to create a landfill. We're looking for solutions. We had heard you're working on this little, sustainable building material project. Would you like, some money to help get it going? And I was like, well, heck yeah, that sounds great. I've never done a grant before. I didn't realize that we have to like hire someone to just take care of the grant. And in the end, I was like, we probably should have just done a couple more jobs and then taken that money and actually done this ourselves. But it was great to have that partnership and a little bit of nudge. Fast forward a couple months, we had started developing our first prototypes, and then the fire in Lahaina happened in 2023. We put everything on hold. We responded to that, and we kind of did what we could to help people get, sort of stabilized and provide temporary housing and temporary schools, et cetera. And then once we kind of were able to catch our breath, we were like, this is really important. This is a non-combustible material. It creates an R40, wall assembly, which is double what our, energy code requires. It's impervious to termites, impervious to mold and mildew, which we deal with in the tropics. It's resistant to hurricanes. It's magnitudes of times stronger than a wood framed house. So we just went all in. And so now we have a 4,500 square foot small factory where we're producing it. So we basically take surfboard waste, and this is where it gets really, really nice and really, makes you feel good inside. Surfing was invented in Hawaii, that sort of pre-Western contact. This is a sort of an essential element of Hawaii. And now we are producing surfboards and shipping them out to the rest of the world and using them right here. And the waste from that, we are turning into resilient houses that are high performance. And they're responding directly to sort of that climate crisis that we're going through, which is the sort of the increased natural disasters. In our case, it is wildfires, but we're also susceptible to hurricanes, and we're susceptible to earthquakes as well. So it kind of just really hits that sweet spot, and it really makes people smile and feel good that, you could have a house that's made out of surfboards.